What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here, of course, on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I told you guys and gals earlier today that I would be on the podcast discussing any questions that you guys have. So this is a little bit different from anything that I've ever done before, in the sense that I've never done a podcast where I had no idea what I was going to be talking about, because what I'll be discussing depends on you guys, the viewers and the listeners of the show. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in to each and every episode. Of course, I got this as a Bills themed show as always, but any questions that you guys have for me, feel free to fire away in the comments section below. I see Patrick Hughes says, morning, almost afternoon, sir. Good morning. Almost good afternoon, Patrick, of course. And I'm super pumped to always be on the podcast. And I'm really excited to hear some of the questions. I know I got a lot of guys that are really excited to have this opportunity to kind of stake their claim of asking me some questions. And I'm going to be sharing this, so pardon the typing in the background, but sharing this everywhere. So in this Q&A, I love it. So starting off, the first question that I had off the air that I was asked is actually in relation to Conor McGregor and combat sports, obviously mixed martial arts. And this question was asked by somebody that I've had on the podcast multiple times, a good buddy of mine, Colin Crandall. And he wanted to ask me on this podcast today if I thought Conor McGregor was ever going to actually fight Michael Chandler. And of course, I think he will. I think in short order, we're actually going to hear more news in regards to that. And that will be kind of in conjunction with the Ultimate Fighter that's starting in May 31st. So I think by May 31st, we'll find out when Conor McGregor will be fighting Michael Chandler. And if I was a guessing man, which I don't like to guess, but if I were to guess when that fight will actually take place, I'm going to predict that it's actually going to be in December at the end of the year. Because yesterday I watched an interview with Conor McGregor and Ariel Helwani, and he stated that he's going to be fighting at the end of the year, trying to fight at the end of the year. So that's how I think that one's going down. At some point in the end of the year, we will see Conor McGregor take on Michael Chandler in the end of the year event for the UFC. Now, Patrick Hughes hopping on here again. He asks, if in the K-Gun Fantasy League, you have the number one pick, I hope I have the number one pick. I'm not sure if I do. Have we come to that conclusion yet? Are we at that point where we know where I'm picking as far as the K-Gun Fantasy? If I'm picking first overall, man, PPR league, right? Pretty sure that's a PPR league, points per reception. It'd be pretty hard not to take Justin Jefferson with the numbers that he has put up over the course of the last few years. Some of the best numbers that we've ever seen. I'm not a big Kirk Cousins guy, but it's very easy to look at Justin Jefferson's numbers and just be wowed by those numbers and say, holy moly. This is something. I don't know if how we were doing that as far as, Scott and Swank. I had not talked to them in regards to the fantasy stuff yet. Obviously, Sunday sessions with those guys, 24/7 Buff Fandemonium. I've been on that a bunch of times, of course. And it says your league creator is not yet scheduled a draft for the upcoming season. So I don't know. I don't know what's what's going on with that. But I don't believe I was fully in last. I think I was close to last. Maybe I wasn't last because I had a wide array of injuries, Jamar Chase being one of them. could have went in a different direction there, and it went in the wrong direction. So Kevin Johnston, what's up, Kevin? He says, what's up, Ryan? What's up, Kevin? Fire away some comments for me, some questions. Any questions that you guys have in regards to any sports topics? Of course, when I was on my podcast last, I did give a draft grade reaction for the Buffalo Bills, and it was one that I think most people would agree with me on, but it wasn't a full grade. It was a pick-by-pick grade, which I liked doing that much, much better, to where I was actually able to look at, the value of those players that they selected. I'm really pumped up for this training camp. June, July, once that season starts to roll around, I will be at St. John Fisher for a few days, covering the team once again. And I'm really excited on behalf of my podcast to be able to do that. Taking it in, seeing how these guys are making their impact, rookies or not. I'm really pumped up for that. I do know there was a question from a good buddy of mine, Thomas Kirchberger, who said that he is curious as to how I feel about the Buffalo Bills finishing third in the AFC East this year. Well, Thomas, the season has not started yet, so they haven't finished third in the AFC East yet. So slow your roll on that. A lot has to happen in order for Miami to take that next step. You know it as well as I do that Miami's got to hope and pray that Tua does not suffer another concussion. If, in fact, he does, he's more likely than not to be done. If he does suffer that concussion and he is done, you got Mike White starting for you. There's a reason why they went out and got Mike White in the first place. And I think that season for the Miami Dolphins, every season, as long as Tua is their quarterback, hinges on Tua's health. If he's not healthy, then they're in real trouble. They're in real trouble. The Miami Dolphins are in real trouble. So Kevin Johnson says, dude, like I said before, I saw you at Wegmans, which we did. I saw him at Wegmans, one of my favorite places to go. And we talked about Dalton Kincaid, which was really cool to meet somebody that had tuned into the podcast a bunch of times, of course. And in the process of that, we had a little discussion there about Dalton Kincaid, and it was great. I loved it, greatly enjoyed it in terms of, breaking that down. So, and I got a lot of Bills people popping on here. Bills fans, this is great. So fire away those questions. Hop on and fire away. This is an open Q&A forum, and I'm pumped to be on today. Very pumped to be on. I'm going to be doing this every Saturday morning in the lead up to games this year, as well as my post-game shows. That's some breaking news for you guys. I like to be as innovative and as different as I can possibly be in terms of this show. And doing that is key for me. So following along here with some questions and feeling free to fire away. While I let those trickle in, Patrick Hughes fires one at me. He says, who will be the Bills' starting running back, Harris or Cook? Very interesting question. Because I was just listening to a good buddy of mine's podcast, Tyler Dunn, former guest of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. He's coming on soon again, working out those details. I got a few guests coming on that we're working out the details, of course. And Tyler and Isaiah McKenzie were talking. And Isaiah McKenzie was saying the Bills are such a pass-happy offense. It was well known that they don't have much of a running game. I think that is going to drastically change in 2023. I think with everything that I've seen this offseason, we're seeing the Bills add to that offensive line. We're seeing the Bills add to the running back room with Damian Harris. But one of my breakout players this year is a guy that I think will be far better in year two than year one, and that's James Cook. So to answer your question, Patrick Hughes, he asked me the question, who do I think will be the starting running back? James Cook is their RB1. Damian Harris is most definitely a better thumper type of back. not necessarily a big back like a Derrick Henry, but definitely somebody that can break tackles very, very well. And I really liked that signing. It was one of my favorite free agent signings when I listed my top 5 free agent signings. That was one of them. And I think he'll make his impact, but I do believe James Cook is going to be a big deal. Kevin Johnson asks, how do you see Josh's year going to be? I think he's going to have a big year. I think anybody that, my buddy Eric and I will be hopping on the podcast. He's been on. You guys have seen him on here a few times. We're going to be doing a lot of fantasy football stuff, just shooting the shit proverbially in regards to all things fantasy football. And we're going to be putting out a top 15 quarterback list for fantasy football for 2023. I'll just be honest with you guys. Number 1 is going to be Josh Allen. I think he's the best fantasy quarterback, bar none. In terms of what you're looking for out of a big year stats wise, I think it could easily represent a year that features Allen with close to 5,000 passing yards. With this offense being as up tempo, I know I just mentioned that I think they will have more of a run game, but I think they will have more of a pass game to the running backs that they have as well. And I think Allen will always be in the neighborhood of 4,500 to 5,000 yards, 4,500 to 5,000, I should say. So I think a big year is coming for him as well. And I'm really excited to have him on my fantasy team again, as the Dynasty League keeps on trucking, keeps on moving. So that's my answer to that question. I think he's going to have a very good year. I think there's a lot of people out there that think that Allen's down. Allen is set for a down season. I don't think so. Patrick Hughes says, who is someone on the Bills roster that is under the radar that could have a monster year? Person that is on the radar, player on the radar, someone on the Bills roster, of course, that is under the radar, I should say, that could have a monster year. Whew, man, that's a good question. I would say if there's one guy that could have, I'll go offense and defense, Patrick. To answer your question, I'll go offense and defense here. One guy that could have a monster year on offense, I'm going Deontay Hardy. I loved that signing as well. New wide receiver. I loved what he did with the Saints. Loved how he was used, and I think Ken Dorsey is going to use him as such. Similarly to that, definitely going Deontay Hardy. And then defensively, I think it's somewhat put up or shut up time for Ed Oliver. So with that being a contract year, anytime a player is in a contract year, they have to have decent numbers. They just do in order to get their payday. And Ed Oliver is going to be working towards that. So I'll go Ed Oliver and Deontay Hardy. I think with a healthy Von Miller next to him, hopefully for the full season, as it looks like Von is going to be ready for week 1 from everything I'm hearing. That's the plan. I think that could bode well for Ed Oliver greatly bode well for Ed Oliver. So going to some other questions here that I got in regards to all things Buffalo Bills, of course. Let's see here. This one was from Bills Mafia Revolution Facebook group. And they're asking me, as far as one player on the Bills that is on the chopping block, who is one player that is on the chopping block? To be honest with you, there's one guy that I think right now he really has something to prove, and you guys are going to be a little bit shocked by this, but I'm going to go Tre'Davious White on this question. And I only say this because obviously Tre'Davious White suffered a knee injury that was not good, and he had to work his way back, rehabilitate his way back into what he was, try to be anything close to what he was. And I just didn't get the feeling that he was what he was prior. I just felt like there was something missing there, and that something missing Maybe it was his overcompensating, knowing that physically he wasn't 100%. Maybe it was the fact that the defense was different around him without Micah Hyde, without Jordan Poyer. Those could be reasons in that regard. Or maybe he's just not the same guy because of that injury. And if that's the case, this year is really big for him to have a full off season, to prepare, to get ready mentally and physically. And he needs to be what he was. He needs to be what he was 100% for the Bills to be what they need to be. That needs to happen. So somebody that's on the chopping block, if he's not where he needs to be, then we might be in some trouble in that regard, because the Bills secondary is young and old, if that makes sense. It's young and old. So we have to have the young guys step up, the older guys play their best football, their last of their best days of football, and we need to hope that Trey White can be what he was prior. And if he's not, I think with that contract, it might be time to move on from a player like that next year if he's not what he needs to be. And I know a lot of people are kind of thinking, wow, did he just say that? One of the best corners in the game? Well, he was one of the best corners in the game. You know, last season, a rookie, I thought the last 6-7 weeks of the season actually outplayed him. So with that being the case, he needs to really show me more in this next season. Kevin Johnston asks, how do you see Sean being a head coach and our defensive coordinator? So this is a very interesting one, and it's a question that I think a lot of people are actually pondering themselves, just in terms of like knowing that this season's going to be different. Why is it going to be different? How is it going to be different? Not only is it going to be different because of all the players that they've added in this new look offense with Dalton Kincaid, with Osiris Torrance more likely than not starting at guard, but it's going to look different in the sense that Sean McDermott is going to have two responsibilities, two major, pardon me with the background there, my fingers didn't pop up, but two major responsibilities. And those responsibilities include head coach overseeing everything and defensive coordinator on top of that. So the defensive unit, the onus is on Sean McDermott. If they fail in any way, he's going to be under more pressure than he ever has been. And I think this could go one of two ways. It could go really, really well, or it could go horribly wrong. And if it goes horribly wrong, then this season will go horribly wrong. That more than anything right there, Kevin, in terms of your question, if Sean McDermott is unsuccessful as a defensive coordinator / head coach this year for the Buffalo Bills, then the Bills could be in some trouble. And that's the only thing that kind of worries me about this season, is McDermott's ability to do both of those things at the same time. It's going to take Sean a little bit of a process period to do both, because for the last 6-7 years, he's done the head coaching job, of course, but for many years prior to that, he was a D coordinator. And to blend those together, you know, I think he should have success with the defense they have. But if they're not successful with this schedule, then what if they start the season? And I'm just saying, I'm not being negative here, just playing hypothetical. I think the Bills, when I did my Buffalo Bills schedule breakdown, I said the Bills will start their season 8-0. I think they're going to start the season hot. But let's say they don't. Let's say, just for the sake of the question, Kevin, that they don't get off to a good start. That would be the reason, one of the reasons why, in my opinion, due to the fact that Sean has to kind of manage two things, and that could be a major factor. And I apologize, my allergies are so bad today, so I'm itchy. My nose is itchy, so I apologize there. But I'm very curious, Kevin, to see how that pans out. And it's going to take a good while to kind of get a read on that. Whether that's actually working or whether it is working, or you guys know what I mean on that. So allowing myself to share this to a bunch of group pages here because I don't see the sense of not doing that, right? Some of these group pages, they allow other podcasts to post their podcasts, but not mine. And I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know what the heck's going on with that. I got to look into that. But maybe they don't allow certain ones, I guess. Clearly, I don't know. That's pretty weird. But all I'm trying to do is just get some interaction and talk to some folks in regards to this upcoming season. So I want to acknowledge too that yesterday was a sad day for football. A very sad day. And I want to acknowledge it because I think without acknowledging it as any football podcast, if you're not, or any football show, if any show is not acknowledging the recent news of Jim Brown's passing, I think you're truly missing the mark. And if I didn't acknowledge this, I would not feel good about myself, because Jim Brown was one of those figures within football, within sport, that I think we'll never see anything quite like that again, because we haven't, based on the time period that he played within, based on the role that he played, based on the personality that he had that allowed him to play that role of not just being a football player, but being more than that. These guys have such a unique opportunity. And I think Jim Brown taught that fact, that along with Muhammad Ali and Kareem and some of those guys from that civil rights era, where they were trying to champion a cause that was obviously extremely important to them and try to change the world. And to be able to do that and be a part in that and to play a hand in that, that goes beyond anything within the hash marks. That goes beyond anything, wins, losses, rushing yards, records that are made to be broken anyway. So it's like all that stuff is kind of trivial, whereas doing something that makes a difference, it sounds cheesy, it sounds corny, but as you and I get older, we realize that's the stuff that actually matters, not the amount of money that's in our bank account, not the materialistic things of, I got a Rolex watch, I got a diamond necklace, not any of that. It's what impact did I make on other people? And I'm learning that ever so much each and every day. But when we lose a figure, an icon, a legend, a figure like Jim Brown, I think it really puts it in perspective that you have to appreciate those legends. You have to appreciate those moments in the past that we might not even have been a part of. I mean, frankly, I wasn't a part of that. I wasn't even born when that stuff was going on. But that's what allowed us to live the path that we're on right now, that allows us to see guys like Patrick Mahomes, allows us to see guys like Lamar Jackson and be massive figures within the game because of guys like Jim Brown, and allows us to coexist as a human society, whether you're white, black, Latin American, anything, we're human. And I think that was Jim Brown's biggest message throughout his entire career. Not only was he a football player, but he was an actor. and a good actor. I mean, Any Given Sunday, he was the defensive coordinator. Scenes with Lawrence Taylor and Jim Brown were phenomenal. So it took me back when I heard that news yesterday. Took me back because it made me think to myself, will we ever see guys like, once you lose a guy like that, you got to remember him. You have to honor him. I hope that the National Football League does something to honor him. I hope that they commemorate his life, his legacy, because without him, not only would the NFL not be what it is today, but sports really as a whole, and I think society largely as a whole would not be what it is today without a guy like Jim Brown. Very revered figure in sports, and he always should be. He always should be. So rest in peace to Jim Brown. Wanted to pay him a tribute today. Definitely a somber headline to read, as we all did yesterday, that Jim Brown has passed on at the age of 87. And I think we're all in agreement here that that's a life of legend. No doubt about it. Definitely. Greatest Cleveland Brown of all time. I think the greatest running back of all time. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that, but more than anything, a great human being. So with that, I'm going to end the show today. I really appreciate you guys hopping on, asking me some questions. I'll be making this bigger and better each and every Saturday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Ryan Thomas. You just tuned in, of course, to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you. Go Bills.